Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Elephant Den. Today we're going to be doing a movie review talking about the newly released ANORA.
Sean Baker
is
the
ANORA.
director, screenwriter, and editor, which is really cool.
For those of you who don't know what ANORA is about, we'll just give you a quick summary. It's about a girl named ANORA who is a sex worker living in Brooklyn. She pretty much has a Cinderella story, meeting and impulsively marrying the son of an oligarch.
Oligarch. We do look at the margins of what it means to be a sex worker, but what I really appreciate about how Sean Baker addresses that world is he doesn't over-sensationalize or exploit what it is to be a sex worker, which can be a very easy and not very tasteful thing to do. Instead of having a very obvious arc for the character, you get a slight maybe hint that there could be something that they're addressing by the end within themselves, or the potential for a change in their lives. But as opposed to being just the character starts here and ends up here, which a lot of people want. They want their character in the film to go through an arc.
It's a more subtle change in perspective, and I think that's what makes it so much more realistic.
And there's like a quiet tragedy to the characters.
We were talking about how this film is actually a neorealism film.
Neorealism comes from the classical Italian era of filmmaking, where you are looking at these working class kinds of characters who are, the story itself is kind of a simple story, but you're following their
unfortunate
situations. Sometimes it's like when it was Italian neorealism and that classical time, it was post Second World War, so there was a lot of interesting conflicts within social class and finding work. Bicycle Thieves is obviously one of the most famous examples of that. And Sean Baker has that in a more modern urban setting. I think what really does the film a favor is the pacing and how it subverts your expectations. So here will be a point where we have to mention a big spoiler. But basically the movie is set up in the first half an hour, 40 minutes as one thing. You're kind of swept away with ANORA, but it's by a guy, a young boy who has very little to no responsibilities. Actually, he faces no consequence, but
very charming.
Yeah, he's very charming and cute, and you could tell he's still young enough to where he's not been corrupted by his own lack of responsibility yet. Like, life hasn't caught up to him yet.
He hasn't faced consequences yet.
And all the more reason is because his parents just, are filthy rich and give him money at his endless disposal. And that's how he's able to afford ANORA as a, girlfriend for a few weeks. And then it leads to their montage sequence, which was very tastefully done. It wasn't too montagey, but when they're in Las Vegas and that experience they have together, to where he finally proposes to her, not finally, but like very suddenly, and she accepts. And you could tell she does it not out of a sense of, wow, she's so in love with him already.
No.
She loves the idea of this is her way out of that business, potentially. And she could play the wife role to him.
Right.
As long as the transaction is there, the money. And this won't work out, but you're not thinking that entirely, because that's what I mean with the film being so accessible, is that concept will usually always trick someone to where, this is an adventure, right?
Yeah.
And the ecstasy of it all, and just the chaos, and it's very enticing. But then the film completely shifts gears, spends nearly the better part of an hour contained in Yvonne, played by Mark.
Mark Eidelstein seems
Uh,
like a new, fresh face.
yeah, and his energy, you could tell he fueled a lot of the energy on set, probably. At least that's how they talk about him. And you could see it in interviews. And people are already, it's so typical, but they're doing this thing. They're asking him, "Oh, how do you see yourself in the future of acting? And like, do you hear these people talking about you, like the new Timothy Chalamet?" Just because he's a skinny white guy
With curly hair.
yeah, and I like how he answered that question kind of respectfully, but he pretty much, you felt it was a stupid question. And all we could say about that is we hope that he gets more opportunities. Unfortunately, how things tend to go, I don't think there's certain barriers with maybe language and how often he is doing American films. But if he so happens to do, I hope it doesn't end up corrupting him, because he's
so genuine and pure, and you could really see that in his
it
interviews.
makes for great interviews.
Yeah.
If you want like a uncensored, authentic response by a young actor.
Because he's really talking about the job as an art, and you could really tell that he's passionate about it, and
Super appreciative. Yeah.
You just hope that he doesn't get corrupted by, the Hollywood side of money,
whatever, yeah.
greedy side of Hollywood.
Yeah, which very few people can manage and survive, honestly. But for me, he was perfect, the best part of the movie. And that's not to say like everyone was up there and every aspect technicality, but I just mean without him, there really is no movie. And people will say that about Mikey Madison, as she's ANORA, and it is very much with her that you're going on this journey.
Yeah, I would say in terms of character, not the actors, because the actors, all of them did an amazing job. But in terms of the character, it really is Ivan's character who creates the chaos.
Right.
And it's everybody around him is reacting in response to what he had created. So
picking up the pieces. Yeah.
Right, pretty much picking up the pieces, including ANORA. But it is really ANORA's perspective of it all.
Yeah.
Because she's the one who is faced with it the hardest out of all of them.
Once news reaches Russia to Yvonne's parents, that he's married to a possible sex worker, that's when the family, complete disrespected, they need to head to New York. But in that time, they're going to get their henchmen, who are also great characters. They're very much, they're tough, but again, they're not exploited as the typical tough henchmen. They're very subtly brought into the story, and they're just everyday people living with their grandmothers, or they have to run out of a baptism just to address this issue with this, because they want to maintain work with this filthy rich family, right? So everyone has to drop what they're doing to address this marriage and have them annul.
Which pretty much emphasizes this problem.
Once they come to the house to try and pick up Ivan, and he runs away, completely ditches ANORA. And you kind of then start seeing the movie very subtly from his perspective, all while staying with ANORA.
That was interesting.
At first, it was interesting. Ashley said, "Oh, he kind of creeped me out at first too, because he's a kind of quiet Russian bald guy in a jumpsuit, not really saying anything." But just the way he watches and his very subtle dialogue, which sometimes it just comes out as words. But I love that you said you could see the process of him thinking of what word to use, because English is not his first language.
Exactly.
So he's taking time.
It looks like he's trying to perfect the word before he says it.
But it also makes him very specific with what words he chooses to use. And usually those are towards ANORA. And at the same time, you're learning he's probably more caring and kind of looking out for her and feeling for her in the situation. Again, done all very subtly. He's by no means a perfect character. And a lot of the ending, there's discussion as to what his intentions are with ANORA. But it was a very wholesome character.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder because I could see the director choosing, like, originally writing the script in the perspective of Honora. And I wonder if maybe Igor, the actor, Yuri Borisov,
Yeah.
I wonder if it was him who brought that out in Igor, and I wonder if Sean Baker ended up really liking what he brought out and then changing things in the editing room to really make those moments stick out.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine it not being planned. And it seemed that it was just the actor really bringing out the performance and with the timing and the character.
This is what all the actors say about Sean Baker when they work with him. They say he talks to every single actor. It doesn't matter how small their role is. Background actors, he talks to them, and he's very open to changes and kind of going with the flow in a way. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you're probably right. He did, in fact, write this role with Mikey Madison in mind. So it was a movie written for her, which is very cool.
I just want to point out, I could see that based off of him seeing her performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because he does include a lot of her screaming, ecstatic freak out in this film. You know, her being a prostitute or a sex worker, which maybe a lot of people can't relate to. There's those things in her, like her fight, how strong she is that people can relate to or they aspire to be.
Yeah, she's a tour de force. Going into this film, a lot of people were saying it was going to be like the uncut gems of 2024, and I completely disagree.
Like suspenseful.
Yeah, this wasn't in such a way a thriller or like anxiety inducing. In the beginning, it's very much this whisked away fantasy that you're on with her, and then it just halts, and just like in real life, those fantasies are very fleeting.
Yeah.
But then when reality and consequences hit, it's upfront, quick, and it's kind of numbing. It's not...
I wouldn't say quick.
I would say quick because it happens suddenly, and then you're looking at a very short amount of time, but it's taking a big chunk of the movie.
Right.
You're almost there with them for 40 minutes.
Right, but that's why I would say, like, as soon as reality hits, it's this long process to go through.
Yeah.
So she has to face...
We're agreeing.
Yeah.
It happens suddenly, but then you have to deal with the consequences, and you feel
longer.
every minute of the consequence as they're looking for Ivan for the next 12 hours or whatever, and just around New York, and you get a great depiction of New York City, not done in the typical sense. It harkens back to movies like The French Connection or Midnight Cowboy, where you get these wide looks at the city and in all its truthfulness and griminess, not taking the nicest shots of New York, you know.
Yeah.
But you feel like you're in there amongst the crowd, and I mean that in the best way, while still focusing on what these characters are, how they're bouncing around trying to find Ivan. And all in that time, I wasn't as anxiety induced, and I was happy I wasn't during that point. There was a lot of slapstick comedy, but drama. It's a perfect dramedy film.
Dramedy?
Which, a lot of people say that.
I loved it felt like real conversation, because you could feel awkwardness between Igor and Honora.
Yeah.
You could feel the awkwardness and like even between Ivan and Honora in like the bedroom scene when they're like getting to know each other on a more.
Yeah.
So it's just those conversations felt so real. It really did feel like I was watching real life people.
I thought what was a really telling line, looking back in hindsight, was when he says to her, "Oh, you're 23, you act 25." And that was a red flag, amongst many other things, that besides just watching his body language and how he wasn't trying to address certain topics or wanting to avoid talking about him, which is very relatable at that age. But he was not emotionally mature. He's probably younger in his soul than what he is 22, and that's already so young. And I think that's why the character was so fascinating, because he is just a very high-spirited, youthful person, which is very
which a lot of people attract to.
Yeah, it's intoxicating, but then he also turns into the villain, and not in
based off of his ignorance.
Yeah, not in the stereotypical sense, but just to what Ashley said, he is. So many people have to deal with the consequence of him.
Yeah, he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, and
which is a lot of entitled rich kids.
Yeah.
I should maybe not say that.
Well, and again, this is why the film is a little more accessible for another reason. It is going bigger, right? These characters and are a little more out there as far as, because he's so rich, it could open up this kind of panoramic experience that you get drawn into with all its craziness and just the journey of it. It does a great job in showing you present culture amongst the younger generations. You see it in like the vaping culture, the language. There's a great scene where the Armenian, I forget the character's name, but he's the main guy working under the family.
Oh, who gets a concussion?
No. That's the sub henchman. I'm talking about Taurus. Yeah, he is the kind of main babysitter of Ivan, and he's it's kind of ridiculous because there's a big section of the film where he's walking around just with a obscure picture of Ivan from his Instagram, and you yourself are wondering, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is not the productive way to figure this out. But there's a great scene where he goes up to a group of young kids at a diner, and they too have the same reaction of like, dude, what are you doing? Just like leave us alone. And he's like, what's wrong with you guys? Get a job.
This generation.
Yeah. So that was awesome. One of the best theater experiences with a packed audience in recent times for myself. Everyone was just hooting and hollering and applauding, and then in the end, which we're not going to spoil, but the way it ends, it's such a kind of gut punch, and it's so different from how you're enjoying the majority of the movie, but it has something to say in the end without overstating it. It's just a beautiful balance and a great theater watching experience. So much fun, so funny. The music is memorable. Performances are off the charts by every single person.
Yeah.
So just one of those near perfect films, and definitely a theater watching experience.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out in the theaters. It's out now.
ANORA.
Sean
Baker.
I
could confidently say one of the most important directors, young directors working right now, who legitimately have something to say, and are, the fact that he's editing, screenwriting, directing, that's just so cool. I really admire that.
Unbelievable. There's so many things to pick up in this film, and that's what I love about it, is the details, and you think about it afterwards and you're like, oh yeah, that, and then you connect dots to other things you've thought about. So there's just so many things we could go on and talk about, but we'd like to know what you saw from this film and what you picked out and what you loved that we didn't mention already. So write down in the comments below what you thought.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoy ANORA. We'd love to hear from you. You know where the subscribe button is if you want to see more videos like this. Click that button, ring the bell, like, comment, all that jazz. Thank you so much.
We also have Instagram that you can follow us at Ashley and Alex.
It's all in the description box below.
Thank you so much for watching.
You're awesome.
You're awesome.